Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this presentation. We will be discussing how to build financial independence for disabled youth, and I will be sharing resources to support disabled youth in achieving financial independence. My name is Milady Garcia, and it is a pleasure for me to be with you today. Before I move forward, I want to go over the learning objectives and agenda for this presentation. So I will be highlighting FEP's approach to equitable financial education for all students, and that, of course, includes students with disabilities. I will be sharing some financial data pertaining to individuals with disabilities. And last but not least, we will be sharing resources to help youth with disabilities achieve financial independence and confidently transition into adulthood. So I want to tell you a little bit about me and my background. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Milady Garcia, and I have the privilege of serving as the Special Populations Program Supervisor for FEP, or the Financial Education Public-Private Partnership. I'll give you a little bit of my history. I was born and raised in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. I emigrated to the United States at the age of 10 and lived most of my life in New York City. My academic background is in early childhood special education, early childhood general education, and also Spanish literature with a focus in Latin American studies. Prior to working with FEP, I have worked as an interpreter and translator for different social service agencies, supporting the needs of most underserved members of the community. Many of them had disabilities, and I was basically providing that bridge to language and understanding so they could access the services that they needed. In my free time, I love reading. I love the outdoors, so I am loving my Washington experience, even though it rains a little bit more than I would like. But my passion is absolutely supporting financial education and advancement in underserved communities. And now that you know a little bit more about me, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Financial Education Public-Private Partnership, otherwise known as FEP. So we were created by legislators that recognized that our students needed the skill to manage their finances upon graduation, right? We're administratively housed in the Office of Superintendent of Public Instructions, and some of our legislative responsibilities are to review financial education instructional materials. We've developed a clearinghouse of financial education resources, and you can access those through our website, fep.org. We also provide professional development opportunities and trainings at no cost. And we also facilitate Senate Bill 5720 grants, which provides funding for districts that want to provide financial education for their students. It's a non-competitive grant, and if you want to learn more about that, you can also find out more about the grants through our website, fep.org. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about our diverse student population, specifically our special population students. Many of our students are showing up into the classroom and they bring all their living experiences with them, right? That doesn't stay outside. They come to the classroom, and some of that living experience is not always so positive, particularly for our special population students. Many of them have conditions and disabilities that make it challenging for them to engage in the classroom. Some are diagnosed, some are not diagnosed. They may have justice impacted parents. They may be at risk of not graduating, like many of our special population students are. And I'll go into greater depth in a minute of what I mean by that. And many of them overall have experienced and are experiencing trauma that makes it particularly difficult for them to engage in the classroom, which is why we are committed to finding the most relevant, inclusive, diverse resources to teach financial education so that we can help our students engage, we can help our students connect, or students, excuse me, connect to those resources and feel like the content is relevant to their real life experiences. And since you've heard me talk about special populations, I want to give a little bit more of an explanation to what that term means. So our special population students are students who face barriers to access education and resources and financial resources and opportunities that other students access with ease. Additionally, the vast majority, or actually all of our students in special populations, have higher dropout rates than other students. There's also a lot of overlap in their experiences. So for this presentation, I am focusing on our special education students, right? Students with disabilities. The data shows they have about a 26% dropout rate. Additionally, many of our students with disabilities are also in foster care. They're also experiencing homelessness or extreme economic hardship and may be at risk of experiencing homelessness. That makes that dropout rate significantly higher because you're compounding challenges on top of challenges, and that makes it so much harder for them to achieve academic success. And that translates to challenges in achieving financial success, which is why I'm so committed to supporting the improvement and advancement of our special population students by providing training opportunities and the most accessible, appropriate, equitable financial education instructional materials. Now, when we talk about equity in financial education, it is one of our commitments. It's our core value and our mission. I want to talk a little bit about how things used to be done and why they didn't work in the past, right? And what our approach is, particularly to serving students with disabilities and achieving financial success. In the olden days, people were focused on what's wrong with the person if a person had a disability, and they overall had lower expectations for individuals with disabilities. And it was very much, you have a disability, you figure it out, that's your responsibility. Thankfully, we have come a long way since then, and FEP is committing to adopting more of a social model, right, when we're looking at disabilities and serving individuals with disabilities. So we recognize that a physical and cognitive impairment are a natural part of human life, right? If we live long enough or if we're ever ill enough for a long period of time, we're going to see what it's like to have a disability. And it's a result of a social barrier, not an attribute of an individual. So we focus on providing opportunities and accommodating the limitations of individuals with disabilities with the most appropriate resources in our case, because that's what we're able to do. And the social model places the responsibility on society to remove those barriers and create inclusive environments, in this instance, for learning and for providing individuals with disabilities with the knowledge and skills they need to manage the resource of money as well as they can to meet their financial goals. So I want to take a moment and pose a question to you. Help us reflect on financial education. How comfortable are you teaching financial education? And there's no right or wrong answer, of course. Some of you may have been teaching financial education for a while and you may feel very comfortable. Some of you may be newer to the arena of financial education and teaching it in the classroom and may be somewhat comfortable. Maybe for some of you, you haven't done this at all. This may be the first presentation that you join with this specific content and focus on financial education. Some of you may be somewhere in between. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. My hope is that after this presentation, you feel a lot more empowered and confident, and leave this presentation knowing about resources and places where you can deepen your awareness and understanding, and hopefully feel encouraged to bring financial education to the classroom or expand on the tools and resources if you're already teaching it, to support your students, especially students with unique needs. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges to financial stability that our students with disabilities face, okay? We're going to talk about some direct costs and indirect costs that cause students with disabilities to have higher financial costs overall. We're going to talk about lower employment opportunities that our students with disabilities face and the higher unbanked and underbanked rates for individuals with disabilities. All of this, of course, impacts their ability to have financial health. So let's start off by talking about those direct costs, right? Overall, we have a statistic that shows that the cost of living for an individual with disability is about 28% higher as it is for an individual without a disability. Overall, in a year, it could look as much as $20,000 more. And to be very specific and clear, this is $20,000 that they're spending not on wants, but on needs. These are things that they need to live life and function in society. These are not expenses that are travel related or something, for entertainment. These are things that they need. One of these expenses that's very much a direct result of having a disability is, for example, personal assistance services. That could be an assistance animal. That means vet bills. That means dog food. If that individual has medical procedures that are going to take, and they're going to have a longer stay in a hospital, which frequently happens for individuals with disabilities, that means boarding for that animal, higher cost. Healthcare is a big one. Often having disabilities comes with physical complications as well and higher medical bills. Mobility aids and assistive technologies that, again, are a need for individuals with disabilities to function in society and be able to move around are extremely expensive. So that also adds, that financial burden. Nutritional needs, special diets, if you're gluten-free, groceries are already expensive. And you have a variety of brands and choices, it's still expensive. But when that variety shrinks due to, diet limitations and restrictions, that grocery budget and that grocery bill gets significantly higher. The budget gets smaller, the bill gets higher. So another high financial cost of having a disability. Housing accommodations. Some people don't think about this, but if you have a disability, you may have to, live on the first floor, or it has to be wheelchair accessible. So again, having fewer options means that you can't shop around for the lowest rent or the cheapest mortgage. It has to be where you can actually live and function, leading again to higher financial costs. And of course, cars overall have, the prices have skyrocketed. But when you add to that, vehicles that have to be designed for wheelchair use and other things to accommodate a person with a disability, that's a significant cost. So these are some of those direct costs, and they lead to higher debt due to medical costs, asset and savings restrictions, because all of the income and all of the resources are going to these needs, and discriminatory lending practices are another burden and challenge that individuals with disabilities face. Additionally, there's often a lack of community-specific financial education. My hope is that this presentation mitigates that. I will be sharing some wonderful resources to help individuals with disability learn about other services and resources and tools to help them achieve their financial goals. Now, let's talk about barriers to employment. That's one of those indirect costs, right? That makes the cost of living higher for an individual with disability. So the data shows that only about 40% of working age adult people with disabilities were employed in March of 23. The main reason that they cited for not being able to work is conditions preventing them from working more, right? They have insufficient accommodation in the workplace, making it almost impossible for them to go, to work and perform that duty. Additionally, of working age people who were not working for pay, 40% reported that they would like to be working, but it's hard when you don't have anywhere where you feel included or accessible, and you have transportation difficulties and you don't have enough education or training. Let's remember the dropout rate for our students with disabilities is 26%, which is significantly higher than non-disabled students. concern about losing benefits. This is another barrier to maintaining employment, especially like high earning employment that can really lead to financial stability if you're also receiving social services. And you have to kind of make that determination between, do I keep this job if I'm going to lose this benefit, or do I work less or not work in order to qualify for this continuous benefit? It is a very challenging situation, right? And these are some of those indirect costs that we may not realize individuals with disabilities have to contend with, making it very hard for them to achieve financial health, right? And some of those financial health markers are being banked and having good credit. So let's talk about the first one, being banked. Data again shows that unfortunately our individuals with disabilities have lower rates of being banked, or which means they don't have a checking or savings accounts with a financial institution, and also higher rates of being underbanked, which means they have an account with a financial institution, but they are using alternative financial services. What are these alternative financial services? These are our check cashing places, which charge anywhere from 3 to 7% of whatever the value of the check is to cash that check. These are our money orders that also have higher fees and can be mitigated by just having, a bank account to cash the check in, or direct deposit. They're also using payday lending at higher rates. These are all alternative financial services that have significantly higher costs. That, on top of those indirect and direct costs of having a disability, make it financially extremely challenging to have good financial health, right? I'm going to keep throwing the data at you because I love data. An individual that accesses alternative financial services can, over a lifetime, spend up to $40,000 just due to the high costs of these financial services. And so many of those costs can be, almost all of them can be mitigated by just maintaining a bank account or an account with a credit union, having direct deposit, having a savings account, building your credit file, right? And that leads to credit health. Unfortunately, we see that individuals with disability also have worse credit scores than those without disabilities. And the interesting factor for me when I learned about this, it's across all income levels. Traditionally, at least for non-disabled folks, the data shows that lower income levels individuals usually have lower credit scores. But the fact that income levels don't really matter, or don't have an impact, rather, excuse me, it matters. It doesn't have an impact on credit scores for individuals with disabilities is particularly distressing. They also face barriers to having accessible and affordable credit. And that's something that we have to continue to advocate for, us in our platform as a financial education public-private partnership. But it's why we're so passionate about sharing resources and sharing tools and sharing strategies, and providing professional development opportunities so our educators feel empowered to help educate our students in financial education with resources that really speak to their particular situation. Now, I know that was a lot of heavy data and it might have felt not so fun, but it's important to know what our students are contending with, so we can better serve them. So now I want to transition to talk about financial inclusion and belonging. And this is the fun part, right? Because I'm going to talk about resources. I know as educators, all of you that are working with students with special needs in the classroom, the more resources, the better. So get ready because I have a few really, really good ones for you. So these are resources that were created specifically for students with disability. I'm going to focus for the purposes of this presentation on our 912 resources because those are more applicable for our youth that are transitioning to independent living, right, and adulthood. So the first resource I have for you comes from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the FDIC. It's called Money Smart for Young People, and this is for our high school students. This is a free resource. No registration is required. It is wonderful. It is a turnkey curriculum, very robust. And what sets this curriculum apart is that every lesson has adaptations, so that you can better meet the needs of your students. It could, whether that student is struggling to grasp a concept or is flying through. They provide supplemental activities, extension activities, a lot of websites and links and resources to help students with different learning style grasp the concept that you're trying to teach. Another great one comes from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, another free resource, no registration required. This one is called Your Money, Your Goals Toolkit, and it's the companion guide for people with disabilities. Another fantastic, robust curriculum. They talk about credit, budgeting, mortgages, rent, independent living, ABLE accounts, which are extremely beneficial for individuals with disabilities. The content has been adapted from their original curriculum to meet the specific needs and address the services and requirements that some individuals with disabilities have to make the content relevant for them, right? The Financial Resilience Center. This resource comes from the National Disability Institute. It's a free resource, no registration required again. And this resource is created to help individuals with disabilities manage their finances. Everything in there is for individuals with disabilities, from managing credit, resources to help them achieve financial health and a positive credit score, to different social services that may be available to buy that assistive technology or to finance whatever their medical needs may be so that they can be in society and be employed. They also have wonderful links for employment. So if you're an individual with disability, they have links with job listings for individuals with disabilities. I've never seen anything like that before. Please check it out. It is a fantastic resource. We also have Sense and Sensibility, the Educator Manual. I just found this resource recently. It is fantastic. It comes from the Pennsylvania Assistive Technology Foundation. It is free. There is a registration that is required, but it's very, very simple to complete. This particular resource, again, a full turnkey curriculum. It offers educators tips and guidance on how to individualize instruction for students with disabilities. They address IEP, they address transition plans, they address different ways to include families and different support people in the community in the lessons. It is such a wonderful, wonderful curriculum. If you're a special education student, a special education teacher, you're really going to love it. I hope you're able to check it out. Additionally, we have a lot more resources through our website, fep.org, that have the universal design for learning in mind. Regardless of whether your students have a disability or not, everybody has different learning styles, right? We have games, we have comic books, we have simulations, we have different resources to accommodate students with different learning styles. So please visit our website. But before I show you what our website looks like, I want to show you some of what's included in that Sense and Sensibility curriculum. They have a lot of worksheets. These are printable and fillable. So if your students are learning remotely or in person, they can work with it regardless of the situation. They have budgeting worksheets. They have worksheets that helps students understand their credit score and the credit report, and activities for preparing for independence, right? They have a plethora of resources. These are all free, extremely accessible. Just wanted to give you an image of what is included in that tremendous resource. And these are all available, as I mentioned to you earlier, through our website, fep.org. So if you go under resources and links, this is what you're going to find. As I mentioned, we have resources for all students, K through 12, but we have, under additional financial education resources, a tab specifically for young adults with disabilities, financial education resources for young adults with disability. You will find all of the resources I shared with you previously under that tab. We have resources and webinars in Spanish, many more resources for our special population students. So if you're interested and want to learn more, please visit our website. Now, I want to take time to acknowledge that supporting the needs of students with disabilities or special population students takes a village. We are a public-private partnership, so we have the advantage and the privilege of working with financial institutions, government agencies, educators, nonprofits, and K-12 programs in OSPI to help us do the work we do intentionally and to provide the most relevant materials possible and trainings available so that you can do the work that you do, which is so impactful and so important. Thank you so much for doing what you do and serving our students. Now, I want to end with this. I want to know what you need to teach financial education. What kind of instructional materials do your students need to access financial education resources? Do they have it? What are you using currently in your classroom? What do you want to see more of? And if you're interested in professional development opportunities, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your feedback. This is my information, so please get in touch with me if you want to learn about more resources. If you have questions about any of the resources I shared, and if you're interested in professional development opportunities, please don't hesitate to connect with me. My email is on the screen. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.